call your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Oh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Many locals are turning to sports to raise awareness for breast cancer. A few local sports clubs are turning to sports to help raise awareness when it comes to breast cancer. A 3-on-3 basketball tournament in Bezetta Township has grown into an avenue to raise money for breast cancer survivors. Now, Youngstown Salem Boxing Club, shout out to the DeFrank family, Ron Johnson. I don't know if they would show me the same love, but they'll be holding an all-female bout for cancer awareness also. Now, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is what has the story trending, and we got it in. That's why story number 1 it made it in this week. Turning to sports to fight a cause. Big head. Story number 2. Anthem and Mercy Health reach a deal. Mercy Health and Anthem has reached a multi-year agreement that allows Anthem enrollees to continue to get care at Mercy Health hospitals. Now, the report released September 30th by The Vindicator is very informative and goes in detail explaining what's in the new deal, citing affordability as a main factor in this new deal. Now, about 3,500 people in the Mahoning Valley were impacted, but now that a deal has been reached, about 15,000 patients will be eyeing what's in the new deal between Mercy Health and Anthem. Now, this is open season is what got this story in. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Auto thieves run wild in Austintown. The local car theft alert continues, folks, but this time it's in Austintown. In recent weeks, according to police reports, several Austintown residents have reported being victims of vehicle theft and break-ins. One Vindicator report says that this has been going on for a year with more than 40 vehicle thefts reported. Now, the report goes on to mention online videos showing how to crack Kias and Hyundais as a contributing factor. Now, consistency is keeping this story alive because they have been consistently breaking in and taking cars. This was number 3. Made it this story number 4. Nasty, Ohio. Uh-oh. Nasty girl, tonight it's gonna be a fantasy. Oh, little nasty world. Ohio continues to crack down on sex trafficking. Not that type of nasty. This is a different type of nasty. This is after Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost announced the completion of a week-long statewide human trafficking operation, resulting in the arrest of 160 people, with 5 nabbed in the Mahoning Valley. Wow. Now, the report is extensive and cites a full list of sex offenders across Ohio. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Cracking down. Big headline. We're all nasty in some way, but they're just a little bit too nasty. Big headline. Story number 5. Youngstown City Schools gets a much-needed grant. Youngstown City School District received a $94,644 farm to school grant, according to a Vindicator report published September 30th. The Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program rationed out a good whopping $10.7 million to 103 projects nationwide, and Youngstown City School got a little bit of piece of the pie. Big headline. That's what's number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. I don't have enough fingers. Story number 6. Is money a problem for Youngstown teachers? On October 1st, The Vindicator published an article describing how Youngstown teachers have the lowest ranking pay in the Mahoning County. Now, this is after a 3-week strike landed them a 3% wage increase for the union, according to the report. Now, statewide teachers are averaging a pay of about $69,080, with Youngstown teachers only receiving $53,292. Now, the report also cites the age, experience, and education of the teachers being hired as a factor. Now, the report goes on to mention Youngstown's financial shape as a city, but does not mention whether the teachers or city workers living outside of the district even plays a factor also. It doesn't mention that, even though some people say that could be a reason why Youngstown isn't bringing in a lot of money, because a lot of people work in the district, live outside of the district. The story is still developing. So story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week. Big headline. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week, folks. Yes, to do this program, I have to learn a new word almost every day, and that's what you learn about consistency. When you're staying informed, as you start to become the news, you start to understand the news, and on top of that, you start to be an asset to the people around you because you are informed and you can inform them. That's how the game is played. So let's get to these top 2 local stories. Story number 7, local property values raise alarm on tax issues. Election time is just around the corner, and some of us have had to vote already for some issues, but now it's election time again. And locals may shy away from tax issues on the November 7th ballot due to concerns about the Mahoning County property reappraisal. This is across the district because local people do not want to be taxed out of their homes. Now, this is a critical story that could cause cuts across the board if some tax levies do not get passed. Now, one story published by David Skolnick of the Mediator on October 1st goes in detail explaining what is actually taking place in the shakeup. This story is still developing because come November time to vote, people will be pulling out that ballot and they will be seeing the fact that their property is already, they might be priced out of their home. Should I vote for another tax? And that's why story number 7 made it this week. Big headline. Story number 8 and the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Yes, I was correct. The general election for Ohio is November 7th. I didn't screw that up. That was close, but that's what it takes to be a mediator. You have to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Woo. Story number 8, support for East Palestine. East Palestine, if your country continues to pour in. Speaking of checking yourself before you wreck yourself, here we go. Bob, the man Helbeck, who is the pastor of the First Church of Christ, has made headlines by offering state-of-the-art air purification for East Palestine, if you're right, East Palestine, of your country businesses. Now, the reports goes on. It mentions unexplained nosebleeds, eye and skin irritation, and other symptoms plaguing the East Palestine people. Norfolk Southern is also still in the fight in the story. The company has donated $750,000 to the East Palestine schools. Now, the money will be dispersed in $75,000 increments every year for 10 years. Now, the goal is to help give the district the resources it needs to provide students with a top-notch education while also attracting new students and families to the community. Now, the article concludes by explaining how Norfolk Southern continues to pour money into the East Palestine community to make up for the train derailment that has caused deteriorating health problems, business losses, and property value concerns. Folks, everybody has been doing their best to bring East Palestine and make sure it stays alive, but the story is still developing because that support, without that support, those people, the people in that village, in that town, will probably lose all of the stuff that they've worked so hard to build. I did have a chance to go out there. Very good community. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. You're the media with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week, folks. It is Indigenous Peoples Day, aka Columbus Day, and reminds me of, I have Indian in my blood. My grandmother's father was Indian, and it's just comical how America has evolved over time because you look at the landscape now and it seems to be it has so many different cultures. But we used to have this history teacher. His name was Mr. Murphy, and he would come into class. The Shawnee Indians would take the territories and they would have extensive combat experience. And the combat warriors, the cold talkers in war, he would just talk about history. And I never knew about this conflict until they changed the name. I didn't know that Indians if it even knew what the heck was even going on. So the moral of the story is one day I was listening to the radio, and we got a lot of Italian representatives in Ohio, and I listened to the radio, and the guy calls in. He was hysterical. What are you going to do about Christopher Columbus and the Italian people? Columbus, what are we going to do if they take down the statues? Because Ohio, the capital is Columbus, Ohio. And if you see, at the end of the day, you get all this stuff that goes on. People upset. It's Indigenous Peoples Day, and it is the Columbus Day. Italians upset. But you don't hear nothing from Indians. Nothing. So that guy comes in my store, and he's telling me about it. We're talking. And he says, Brian, how do you feel about the Indians and Christopher Columbus Day? And I really didn't know what to say. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I guess it means a lot to some people. So this Columbus Day, I have some Italian friends, a lot of Italian friends. And I know some Indians. I know a lot of Indian friends. And seeing that fact that I have some Indian in my blood, I'm going to celebrate 2 holidays. I have a lot of Italian friends, Indian in my blood. So I'm going to come up with the name. I'm going to call it Kula Indigenous Day for me. Kula Indigenous Day. And that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to go to the Ohio State Capitol. And I'm just going to go there with a bow and arrow, some feathers. It's going to be my celebration. And I'm going to smack as many people as I can. And they're going to say, why are you doing this? And I'm going to smack them, and I'm going to remind them of what it took to find a place in the world where everybody in the world could come and smack somebody. A lot of Indians died. So you could smack somebody and call it Kula Indigenous Day. Ho, ho, in honor of my great-grandfather who was an Indian. Well, folks, let's waste no time. Woo! Glad I got it off my chest. Ho, ho, let's get to it. Story number 1 in honor of Kula Indigenous Day. Ohio and the education overhaul. Speaking of Ohio, the story. ABC News has a piece on how Ohio's K-12 education system has become the center of a legal battle between lawmakers and members of the State Board of Education. That's the word-for-word main idea in the piece. Now, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine passed HB 33 in July, which is part of the state's budget bill. Now, the piece goes on to explain the plan, which will take much of the power from the Board of Education and direct it to a governor-appointed director who would then appoint deputy directors, giving locals less power in their education decisions in their districts. Now, this story has caused a wave of concerns across the state, thus turning Ohio's school district into work training institutions governed by the state. That's what it looks like. Now, citing more concerns about what is taking place in each political party, this is what is going to happen, because when you look at this is what it's going to do when it comes to education and power grabs. Especially when you talk about young America. How are you educating these kids, especially when you talk about who has the power to educate? These are children, and a lot of these children don't know the truth, and what you teach them at an early age, they may think is true when they grow up. So that's why this is such a big deal. And if it's in the hands of the state without being in local educators, these kids that may not be fed what actually really went down, even when you talk about how America was founded and what it's called today. So there's truth in this. The story is still developing. That's why story number 1 made it this week. Big help. Story number 2, real estate gurus are on watch. Folks, the market is taking some unusual turns. Prices are up and down. So real estate gurus are on watch because property values are increasing in many parts of the area, thus making places like Florida a hotbed as prices continue to change. Now, this is causing a big problem, especially for people in poverty or people who want to try to own their first home. There are even arguments on local radio stations talking about how people don't really even own their home in America because they still have to pay taxes to the government. So real estate gurus are on watch because these are the people who are making the major moves and who own the houses. They rent them out, and they want to make a profit. So story number 2 is just heating up. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Where are the workers alert? Reuters has a where are the workers alert. The piece says that U.S. jobs openings has posted the largest increase in 2 years when the number of people quitting was remaining unchanged. Now, just to give you an idea on how bad this is, job openings increased 690,000 to 9.61 million in August. Now, I have to note that this was unexpected. The report focuses on an already tight labor market with small businesses with less than 10 employees accounting for the bulk of the rise in job openings. Now, the article goes on to mention job openings in just about every sector. Now, that means that there's probably a job in just about every sector that we're talking about, all types of places. Oceanography, everywhere. Now, one economist says that even though things may seem grim, Americans, to be specific, are still hungry to work, and that's a good thing. The story is still developing. That's story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. The markets could be trying to tell us something. 10-year and 30-year Treasury yields are at their highest level since 2007, according to a CNBC report. The talk now is all about money and what the Federal Reserve will do to balance things out. The article goes on to mention a still tight labor market, which is giving the Federal Reserve the green light to keep lifting rates. Now, the biggest talking point and what's obvious is that the market is telling us that inflation is still too high, and how to bring it down is the topic of discussion. The story is still developing. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4. So don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
What does Method8Inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8Inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, yes, it is Indigenous Peoples Day, aka Columbus Day, and I live in the state of Ohio. And this is what these topics this week are about. But if we recall, they started changing the names of major league teams, football teams. And it had gotten so bad to where a guy came into my store and he was upset. He sold all of his Cleveland Indians stuff. I mean, this guy was furious. He came into the store, tears. I said, what's wrong? I want to sell all of my Indian stuff. Just put it all in the store. And seeing I had any of my family, I took it all in. I said, it's going to be all right, brother. Guy left the store in a fit, terrified. I get a call later on today, maybe about 3 hours later. Hello? Brian, I forgot to bring one more thing. What did you forget? I forgot my Chief Wahoo statue. Oh. Folks, this Indigenous Peoples Day, or Columbus Day, is dedicated to the people we've lost, the teams we've lost, and the code talkers who helped win the mighty wars. Let's waste no time. Let's get to it. Story number 5. At least the little red men are still around. There are different opinions when talking immigration. If you're a humanitarian, you may see some immigration stories as people seeking help. If you're a lawmaker, you may see some immigration stories as people breaking the law. Either way, the Washington Examiner has a piece stating that Mexico has begun busing immigrants from Guatemala to the U.S. border. The report says that approximately 400 immigrants waited for government buses in southern Mexico to be transported to the U.S. border. The report even mentions the cost of tickets ranging from $22 to $85. This week alone, there were 6,000 people making their way across from Guatemala each day, with arrests amounting to 8,000 people. Now, this is after an opinion piece in USA Today says that America is not seeing an unprecedented surge in immigration, and new census data proves it. That's an opinion piece. Now, according to the piece, immigration share of the U.S. population is just 13.9%. Folks, this story is still developing. That's why story number 5 made it this week. The debate continues on if immigration really is a problem. Big. Story number 6. Is it a problem that we're not saving as much as we should? The savings rate is falling in America, according to economists. The piece states that the rate was at 3.9%. Was at 3.9% in August, which was well below a decades-long average of roughly 8.9%. Now, the way Americans are spending has economists worried. The article goes on to state some key figures on what is causing the strange sequence of America's new spending habits. The story is still developing because people are trying to say we have a spending problem, and some people say we have a debt problem, but when we don't have our savings, then we have a money problem. That's why story number 6 also made it to the top 2 this week. Big. Story number 7 and the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, I've traveled long and near to give you something that could be useful, beneficial, keep you informed. Story number 7. Is it a debt or spending problem? Goldman Sachs has a piece stating that U.S. debt will hit a new record by 2025. The article states that total interest payments on the U.S. debt could amount to $10.6 trillion over the next decade. This means that debt will become too expensive. The only solution now may be to spend less and pay down debt, which may be too much to handle because with interest rates on the rise, that's more money to pay for debt and less money to spend. The article is extensive, citing some key numbers to tackle ahead to keep the U.S. Treasury on a level playing field. So it's telling you the numbers. It's an extensive article. This story is still developing. That's number 7. Also made it to the top this week. Big. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. Stir the brain. Stir the brain. Is there really a war against the middle class? Uh-oh. Big headline. Conspiracy gurus look for patterns. These patterns help them reach a conclusion on whether something happens by design or a well thought out plan for a particular group of people to either maintain control. Does it happen by design, or is things just happening because it's a well thought out plan to keep people to maintain control, to help them keep power? Or they look for patterns to make adjustments. Are people making these adjustments to the current rule of law for whatever reason? These are conspiracy gurus. Now, with 75,000 Kaiser healthcare workers now striking, in addition to the auto workers strike, and then we had the Hollywood strike, one headline by Reuters stating that GM will furlough another 163 workers due to the UAW strike has underground media in a frenzy, and insiders are noticing either something is masterminding this or middle-class America is really under attack, as I believe they would probably say. I think it was Wolf Blitzer or Lou Dobbs back in the day. I don't know if you remember those analysts, but some people would always say that there may be a war on the middle class. Folks, this story is still developing. That's why I started on Raid made to the top this week, because I come from the middle class. A lot of us do come from the working class America. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out of the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the mediator, the man navigating your stories to keep people informed. If you want to show us some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program. Or you can stop at the store at 5648 Market Street and buy something in the store, shake my hand, do whatever you want. 5648 Market Street in Boardman in Youngstown, Ohio. Well, folks, I am out here. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just to keep you informed. Have a good Indigenous Peoples Day, a.k.a. Columbus Day. Ho, ho, I'm out of here. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.